Stay tuned for an all-new episode of Cooking with Esher followed by Wheel of Fish, right here on U62.
Watermelon is a rare and delicious surface delicacy, but most humans throw the best part away. Join me as I show you how to pickle the rind from a watermelon, right here on Cooking with Esher. Shora and greetings. My name is Esher, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to my kitchen. Now, before we start, I want to let you know that we received all of your letters after our last show, and I'm very sorry that my Dakhni accent was too thick for you to understand. Please let us know if this accent is easier. Now, today we're talking about pickles. You're probably familiar with pickled cucumbers like these. This is a nice dill pickle that we made last week. But did you know that you can pickle many different foods? Pickling adds great flavor while also allowing you to store short-lived foods for a long time. In fact, some pickles can last in your pantry for months or years. And I'm telling you, during the fall of Dakhni, I wish I had had some good pickles to eat, but as you say on the surface, that is another show. Now, today we are going to make pickles from the rind of this watermelon. They are delicious, and the color is most pleasing. Now, watermelon is a delicious fruit, but they're very hard to find. They're worth the search, though. I managed to discover an entire age of watermelon, so we'll be selling them outside the station all this week so that you can make these pickles at home, too. This is a very small watermelon, and to be honest, it's getting a little old, but it'll work just fine. Now, the first thing to do is to cut a little bit off of the ends. A little bit there, just throw that away, and a little bit there. We do this so that you can more easily and safely stand the watermelon up while cutting it. Now, we're going to cut it into wedges. So, very simply, just cut down through to the middle without cutting all the way across, and cut a wedge. We'll set that off to the side. Cut some more wedges. And in the interest of time, we'll just work with those 3 wedges. Now, I have another watermelon that I cut up earlier. The next step, you're going to want to switch knives because this knife is much too big. It's much safer for this part to use a small knife. And remember, you really do not want to cut yourself because medical knowledge on the surface is not quite as advanced as it was back in Dakhni, and you wouldn't want to get an infection. Now what you're going to do is take this watermelon and cut slices right down the front. Not all the way through, though. Move these so you can see. We'll cut down just a bit. Move that out of the way. And then you will cut around and down to cut the flesh out. You want to leave about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of flesh on the watermelon rind. We'll set that off to the side and do the other 2. We had a different but similar sort of melon down in Dakhni. This was the closest I could find. Of course, we had other varieties of vinegar. But your surface vinegars work just fine. Get rid of that seed. You don't want to cut all of the flesh off because it'll add some color as well as flavor. And if you don't quite cut enough off, you can always go at it again. Great maker. Can't you people on the surface do anything right? Richard, what? Oh, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize. We are going to get right back to where we were. We had some technical difficulties. Now, we just finished cutting the flesh off of the rind. We are going to set the flesh aside for later. Now, we have to peel the skin off of the back of the rind. You don't want to start cutting the rind and forget to peel the skin off first. Believe me, I've done it, and then you have to cut skin off of every single piece of rind. So we're just going to carefully remove the skin, from the rind with a vegetable peeler. Now, you don't want to remove too much because of the rind is what we're trying to pickle. And on the smaller watermelon, the rind is quite thin. However, the more you do remove, the more tender the pickle will be. So it's fine if a little bit comes off with the skin. Oh, these surface peelers aren't like what we had in Duckney. But that's okay. Variety is the something of life, I believe you surface dwellers say, right? 2 more to go. And of course, if a little bit doesn't want to come off, as happened earlier, you can just trim it off with your knife. Set that aside, do 1 more. And sometimes you'll find that you haven't quite cut enough of the flesh off. You can just quickly come back, cut that off, toss it in the bowl, and get back to peeling. Great. Now we can just throw these peels away. Cut that little bit off. Now, what you want to do is cut the rind up into bite-sized pieces. Now, you can cut these into whatever size you would prefer. I like to cut them smaller because they fit better in the jars, and you can pack more rind per jar. But you can cut them to whatever size you like. As I believe one of your great philosophers wrote, this is your world. It's your kitchen. You can cut your rinds to whatever size you would like. There's 1. I like to cut them into smaller pieces first to make it easier to cut them in half if necessary. And again, be very careful. You do not want to cut yourself. You'd ruin the pickles, for one thing. And 1 more. I understand that here on the surface you have culinary schools. It's a very wise endeavor. We had a culinary guild back in the cavern. Of course, I was not part of the culinary guild. I just learned for fun. I was part of the illustrious Well, we can talk about that another time. I don't like to bring up the past, you know. And there we go. And as you can see, I have already cut up the rind of another watermelon beforehand. So now we will get started on the pickling liquid. For the pickling liquid, we will need a pot. And into the pot, you will add 2 cups of water, 2 cups of good vinegar. You can use cider or white vinegar or whatever you can find. If you can't, I prefer to make my own vinegar, of course, but if you can't, it's fine to link out and buy some. There's the vinegar. 3 cups of sugar. Half a teaspoon of peppercorns. I use a mix, but you could just use all black peppercorns or all of your favorite color of peppercorns, whatever you can find. Half a teaspoon of cloves, whole. The more things you can use whole, the better. 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, that is, of course, 3 of your teaspoons. So 1, 2, and 3. 2 teaspoons of whole coriander seeds. 1 teaspoon of celery seeds, and a cinnamon stick. You could also add a half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes if you want a little bit more kick, but I prefer it this way. Now, I'm going to bring this over to the heat and stir it over medium-high heat until the sugar dissolves and it comes to a boil. Then we'll get to pickling. But for now, please enjoy this word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, today we are making pickled watermelon rind. Now, my pickling liquid has just come to a boil, so I'm going to turn down the heat and start adding my rinds. Now, if you have too many, which we might, you can always do this in 2 batches. Just put in as much as you can, without splashing, ideally. Try another hand. I wish you could smell this pickling liquid. It's a wonderful vinegar, spicy smell. It's delightful. Hopefully you try this at home so you too can taste it and smell it. All of the senses. Now, this has to come back up to a simmer. And once it begins to simmer, you want to leave it in the pot for 3 minutes. And then we will put it in the jars. But while we do that, why don't you watch this clip that we shot earlier? The rind is the best part of the watermelon. But what about the flesh? Well, you could just eat it, or you could make watermelon lemonade. First, put your watermelon flesh into a blender and blend it until it's smooth. Strain out the pulp and all those little bits of seed and put it in a large jug. This is about 6 cups of juice, give or take. Now to that, we're going to add 4 cups of water. Just like that. 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup of lemon juice. And 3/4 to 1 cup again of white sugar. Now, I give you a range there because you will have to taste the juice from your melon and decide what kind of sweetness and what kind of tartness you want. So we're going to mix this well. Make sure you get all of that sugar nice and dissolved. And once you get it nice and mixed, give it a taste. See if it needs more of that lemon juice or more of that sugar. And just like that, you have fresh, simple watermelon lemonade. Enjoy it with some fresh mint or a splash of ginger beer, or for something really special, add just a little bit of Erkanen rum for a kick. Didn't that look delicious? That lemonade is good enough to eat. Now, these rinds have been simmering for 3 minutes, so I'm going to turn off the heat and grab my jar. These jars are nice and clean, and I've been letting them sit with warm water in them so that they will be warm and the heat from the rinds won't cause the jars to shatter. Shouldn't happen anyway, but it doesn't hurt to do that. Now, I like to use a slotted spoon for this. I'm going to start removing the rinds and putting them right into this jar. And you will undoubtedly have some of the spices fall in, which is just fine. We want those spices in the jar anyway. This really does smell delicious. And if I keep holding this jar, we're going to have a problem, so I'm going to put it back down. Oh, we lost one. And you don't want to fill this jar up too high. You want to leave about a ½ an inch to an inch at the top of the jar. We can press these down a little bit. We do want to take up as much of the space in the jar as we can. We'll be putting in the liquid after we put these in, but we want to get as many per jar as possible. And you may need to use a second jar. I suspect we will. And if you're doing this in 2 batches because your pot isn't big enough to hold all of your rinds, what you would do is simmer the first portion of your rinds for 3 minutes, take them out, put them in the jar, try to keep as many spices as you can inside the pot. I'm going to move to a second jar now. Smaller jar. Keep as many spices in the pot as you can, because what you want to do then is... We lost another one. I will switch to something a little smaller. What you would do then is put the rest of the rind back in the pot, simmer that for another 3 minutes. You'll lose a little bit of the liquid, but it shouldn't be enough to matter. Oh, we're losing rind left and right here. Just a little bit more to go. One more jar. And do remember, like I said, if you can find watermelon somewhere near you, go right ahead and buy it, but if you can't, we will be selling it at the station all week, fresh from the watermelon age that I discovered. Just about there, just a few more spoonfuls, spoonsful, however you want to say that. I don't really know, English isn't my thing, as you can imagine. I've been taking lessons. Got our nice ½ inch space at the top there. Last few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, in the bottom of the pot, most likely, will be your stick of cinnamon. You could, if you prefer to keep that in the jar, you could have I will start ladling this liquid in. You could have broken it before putting it in the pot. Broke it into 2 or 3 pieces so you can get a little bit in each jar. I prefer to keep the cinnamon out of the jars. Because I feel that there is enough spice already. And I don't want them to get too spicy. But again, if you like that spiciness, you can put in the red pepper flakes and leave the cinnamon in the jars. There's 2 and 1 more. Remember, these are hot, so you probably shouldn't do what I did and touch them. I met this kind woman in, I believe you call it England. She refers to this as asbestos fingers. Now then, I have quite a bit of extra liquid, so I could cut up some more rind and simmer them in that and fill some more jars, but I think that's enough for now. So, we will be closing these up, and then we'll close up the show. I hope you'll join us right after this. Welcome back to Cooking with Esher. We're just about done with our pickles. Now, I've already cleaned the rims of these jars, both inside and outside. And so I am just going to put my lids on. And remember, these will be hot. You might want to use a towel. 1, 2, and 3. Now, leave these to cool. And then once they are room temperature, you want to store them in your cold box. That's truly a remarkable surface invention. Back in Duchny, when we had to keep things cold, we had to link to an ice age. It was very inconvenient. I wish we had invented one of those, refrigerators. Yes. Now, keep in mind that these are not the kind of pickle that you can keep on a shelf for months and months and months. These will go bad, so keep them stored in the refrigerator, and they should last for at least a month, possibly more, though you may eat them before then. I hope you've enjoyed our look at pickling watermelon rind. Don't forget to come buy your own melon outside the U62 station this week, and do be sure to tune in next week. We will be covering traditional Duchny mushroom bread. Until then, I wish you good health and happy cooking. Bye-bye.
That was Cooking with Esher. Stay tuned for an all-new Wheel of Fish, right here on U62.